All right, so this last topic we're going to focus on for the rest of the show is the other topic in my title here, which is about the Jesuits. And I see there's some comments, people interested in this topic. What you see here behind me, my friends, there's 4 shelves and some books on top, and there's a bunch of books in boxes over there, and there's a bunch of books on the way to me right now. This is my library that I've been collecting over the years. It's nowhere near as impressive as I hope it to be someday, but I do have a lot of cool books that I've been collecting over the years, particularly older books about so-called conspiracies, not because just because something's old is necessarily true. We don't want to fall into this appeal to history, or an appeal to antiquity that like, okay, because something is old, it must be true. No, there can be old books that are cool, but they could be just as false as anything said today. So I think that's a trap some people might fall into occasionally. But I do like to study old books where people were warning about the influence of Zionists or the Jesuits or the Freemasons. And these go back to the 1700s, some cases even earlier. So a good amount of my books here range from things on 9/11, COVID, secret societies, and then, the more classic older books. Today, I am going to pull a couple off my shelf, but what we're going to go through now for the next little bit here is I wanted to share some of the latest research I've been doing for the Pyramid of Power documentary series. If you guys haven't seen the Pyramid of Power yet, I encourage you to visit thepyramidofpower.net. The goal with this series was to release 4 episodes at, reasonably within a time frame as a so-called season. So we're in season 4. We're waiting for chapter 16, the final main episode of those seasons, to come out in January. And then after that, the final penultimate episode, number 17, the top of the pyramid, will be answering that question. But you can go back and see the 15 episodes that we've released since 2021, like I said, broken up in seasons of episode 1 through 4, 5 through 8, and so on. And the idea is that each of these episodes starts out and the first cornerstone is education and corporate media, pretty basic topics, but doing a deep dive into the facts around it. I don't get into hyperbole. I don't get into speculation. Every episode of this series, you can find my transcript with all the links and all the resources and my references. And I think that's important. So as you go through the episodes, each episode is going to take you through my original research as well as references to previous books and documentaries, which I think tell the story. And also every episode is going to end with recommended reading and watching and some suggested solutions. This was my goal, was to try to make something that could be bingeable. So if somebody tunes in and they listen to it, the audio is good, the research is good, the visuals are appealing, interesting, there's nice music soundtrack, and it pulls you in and you're like, oh my God, that's crazy. Let me watch the next one. Hopefully I've succeeded. I've got some really great reviews over the years. People have told me they've used it for homeschooling, that they've played it in different kinds of situations, that they got friends and family to listen who normally wouldn't listen to so-called conspiracy videos. And maybe that's because I don't see it as a conspiracy series. I see it as a true crime series. Like I said, focused on the factual information that I can prove. Now, as we get to the final episode of Who's at the Top, I will have to get a little bit speculative because I don't think anybody truly knows. And so there's some level of speculation once we get above a certain hierarchy on the pyramid, so to speak. But I am going to be drawing my own conclusions. The next episode that's coming out in January is called Religion and Secret Societies. And it is going to be, of course, my perspective on religion, but also looking at historically how religion has been used to manipulate and divide people and as a justification for war and for violence and many other things like that. And how I believe organized religions, institutionalized religions are actually taking people away from their connection to the divinity and to the direct source. Whatever God you believe, whether you praise Jesus Christ or something else, that you have a direct connection to that relationship, and that you don't need a priest or a pastor or a church or even a book to define that for you. And so we're going to get into that. We're also going to talk about how a lot of people who claim to be certain religious traditions actually are practicing members of different secret societies. And then in the final episode, like I said, we're going to answer the question of who's at the top of the pyramid. So what I want to share with you guys today is I'm going to give you a real preview of the background of what I'm working on. This is going to be, you'll see a little bit of my, my crypt pad, my document framing my script because I'm going to be working on it very soon. And then we're going to go through about a dozen different links referencing some pieces of the puzzle. I'm not going to tell you everything that I'm going to be covering in this last one, but just throw out a few different references. And I know that I have an amazingly well-researched audience out there across all the different platforms that are just, you guys are constantly giving me tips and things and new rabbit holes to go down to. I don't necessarily follow you on all the different things, don't always agree with everything, but I do get a lot of great tips and I'm very grateful for that. So I will be making a lot of different references. I'll be showing you guys a couple of books, and I look forward to the comments. So let me go ahead and let's go ahead and share this. This is, as I said, my crypt pad, my document for chapter 17 of the Pyramid of Power. And let me zoom that in a little bit so you guys can see it. And I did this before when I was making my documentary for the Finders, namely because I was advised by friends that, hey, if you're going to be researching some pretty dangerous topics that people might want to keep secret, maybe you should make your research public in case something happens. So it was a good way to just share my background research in the build up to the documentary, but also make sure that my information was public. And not that I have this concern for this one, but nevertheless, here we are. So who's at the top of the pyramid? We're going to, some of the pieces of the puzzle that I've already covered at this point, as in the final episode, or in the public government level. You've got big education, you've got the intelligence community at the corporate level, you've got corporate media, big wireless, the nonprofit industrial complex, the foundations, the prison industrial complex, the food complex, institutions that overlap with government and corporate. You've got big tech, the banking cartel, the oligarchy, the pedo class, and then entertainment. Of course, you've got Hollywood and the intelligence connections there. This interlocks in different ways to create what I call the technocratic state, the people who are being guided by technocracy, as we cover in chapter 13. And then one of the tools we covered in chapter 14 was that they use, 15 was false flags. And then spiritual manipulation, like I said, that's going to be religion and secret societies for chapter 16. And so the first beginning of chapter 17 is going to be like a summary of everything that we've touched on, just real brief, like I just did, but a little more in depth. And then we'll start to say, okay, well, who's at the top of the pyramid? And there's the obvious sort of front groups, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations, the Club of Rome. I say front groups because I don't think those are the top of the pyramid by any means, but they are public-facing groups that promote the agendas, and those agendas filter their way down all the way to the local level. We'll give a brief history of that, and then I'll define, what I call the predator class at the top. I also want to explore this idea of synarchy. I had synarchy somewhere else here too, though. Yeah, I'll save that for just a moment. Predator class at the top. And then we'll get into this term, the deep state. And I have an interview. If you guys don't know who actually popularized the term deep state in the English language, it's this guy, Peter Dale Scott. Now, Peter Dale Scott is an older gentleman. He's got to be in his 90s by now. And I definitely don't think he's as sharp in his analysis on world events as he used to be. Frankly, I don't think he was very correct on COVID, but this guy understands deep politics, and it's him that popularized the English term deep state after it was like a Turkish term originally. And so he's researched 9/11 and so many other topics. I interviewed him a couple years ago. It's going to be featured. He's been featured in a couple episodes, but he's going to be in this last one describing his belief of what does the deep state actually mean, right? And then we're going to have an interview with Patrick Wood, some of which I've already clipped. And basically the goal is to just ask all these people who's at the top of the pyramid. And I've done this. So, Peter Dale Scott's going to say it's the deep state. Okay, so what is the deep state? Let's look at that idea. Patrick Wood says it's the Trilateral Commission and the group and the technocratic state, the technocracy behind it. Okay, well, let's look at what that's about, right? And then there's this term, the synarchy, which has been described in some ways as a technocratic elite with secret societies playing a role. So just for those who have no idea, never heard of this, I do encourage you to look into it. There's a whole deep history that is pretty interesting. It's a whole other rabbit hole. Synarchism, synarchy, it's not like anarchy. It's this meaning of like kind of technocratic rule by elites. And, there's supposed to be secret societies that are kind of guiding things. It's just another way of control. And it really comes from the writings of Alexandre St. Ives, who you may have heard he's connected to. I've talked about the book about Agartha, the Hollow Earth, before. He wrote that book, and that goes into some other claims that there's like a secret elite inside the Hollow Earth. Yeah, I've been knee deep in some of this research. But he talks about synarchy, in one of his books, he said that this was an ideal form of government, a reaction to anarchist ideologies. And so there is some belief that that this term actually is maybe one of the terms that the so-called hidden elite, the shadow government of the deep state, has referred to themselves as. And it's, as it says here, the word synarchy is used, especially among French and Spanish speakers, to describe a shadow government or a deep state, a form of government where political power effectively rests with a secret elite. And there's like a whole history of this going back to Vichy, France. Encourage you to check that out. I'm sure some of you are familiar with that. Then, of course, we'll get into the Bilderberg group. And I'm going to be interviewing Daniel Esterlin, who is one of the most well-known researchers, long-term researchers of the Bilderberg group. He wrote like the big book about the Bilderberg group. And we're going to look into the history of it, like Joseph Redinger, Boy Capel, Arthur Edward Capel. There's these different characters. And when people ask who really created the Bilderberg group, and we know Henry Kissinger was deeply involved in that as well. Like I said, there's Joseph Redinger. I've actually found a biography on him recently. This is one of the Bilderberg meeting websites where they admit that it was his idea to kind of create what we now call the Bilderberg group, along with Prince Bernhard and others. And he's got an interesting history. So we'll be talking about the history of the Bilderberg group, interviewing Daniel Esterlin about that. We'll get into the Committee of the 300, which is an idea that was promoted by, many people know about it from John Coleman, but there's also a German politician, Walter Rathenau, in 1909 wrote about this as well. This idea that there was 300 men, leaders in business who were the rulers of everything. And, that's where this idea of the Committee of 300 comes from. We're going to talk about Zionists, of course, the influence of Zionism on our world around us. I'm going to have an interview with Adam Green that's going to be really great on that. We're going to talk again about the creation of the State of Israel by the Rothschilds. And as you guys know, there's this unquestionable, pledge allegiance to, do not speak ill of Israel that is just pervading most major nations. And then we'll talk about the Judeo-Christian religion, how that ties in. And then, of course, we'll talk about the Freemasons. The Freemasons' involvement in the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, the Spanish. I've got a list here of presidents who've been Freemasons, UK prime ministers, Mexican presidents, various monarchs from around the world, the kings and queens who were Masons and involved in related so-called secret societies. I've got some history here about George Washington, warning about the infiltration of secret societies and associations. September 19th, 1796, Washington says, "Beware of the little local republics springing up around the country. And my view from the nature of the thing, they are sources of mischief. The great rule of conduct for us in regard to foreign nations is in cultivating peace and friendship. There is, however, another rule of conduct which, being a derivative of the former, deserves particular attention. It consists in the restriction of foreign intrusions and influences. The great and chief aim of this policy ought to be, as is the right of every nation, to preserve its independence, its liberties, and its honor, to maintain and strengthen the ties which bind this nation to its neighbors." So he's going on warning about the influence of the Freemasons. There's also a book about this, 1798, Letters to Washington, where he was warned about it. I have the book right here. It's called Proofs of a Conspiracy. Here, I'll show you guys on screen. I tweeted about this. I actually did a report about this maybe a couple months or over the summer, July, talking about this book from John Robeson, 1797. You can find it online, if you want to download it or whatever, look for it around. I'll just show you guys. This is my copy of it. Proofs of a Conspiracy. This is what I'm talking about, like going back and finding the old material, right? I don't want to just listen to somebody on YouTube or somewhere else say the Masons are behind it, they did everything, or it's the Jews, or it's the Jesuits. I want to be able to go find the original source material and dig deep into these older books. Again, just because it's old doesn't mean it's necessarily true, but it is interesting because I don't remember ever being taught this in history, that there were people warning from the beginning of the United States about the influence of Freemasons and other secret societies trying to come from France and elsewhere, who'd been influenced by the Illuminati, secret society that was being banned and run out of places to try to infiltrate the United States. Now, that's just one theory. Like I said, I don't think that's not my conclusion of the pyramid of power, but we're just talking about a range of theories that people have. that I think, they're interesting, they're relevant. And this is just one of them. So like I said, Washington, he spoke about it. He was warned about it from this Scottish priest, I believe he was, John Robison, in the book, Proofs of a Conspiracy. We also got Alexander Horn. He's this other guy here that I've been checking out. He wrote about France's activities in undermining the so-called Holy Roman Empire. And it's his work that actually kind of formed the basis for John Robison's work in Proofs of a Conspiracy. So again, I try to find, okay, John Robison has these claims. He's got this in a book. Okay, being old doesn't necessarily mean true. What's his sources? What's his information? Okay, he got this from Alexander Horn. Let me learn more about him. Let me dive deeper into his history, right? Then there's another book that's by Horn called Memoirs Illustrating the History of Jacobinism. And this is a book not by Alexander Horn, but by Abbé Augustin Borel, a French Jesuit priest who wrote this in 1797, around the same time as Proofs of a Conspiracy. It was translated to English in 1799. He claims that the French Revolution was the deliberate result of a deliberate conspiracy or plot to overthrow the crown, and it was initiated by a coalition of different people, including the Order of the Illuminati and the Freemasons. So we're going to dive deep into this. This is an account from 300 years ago. 250. 200 something years ago, 230 years ago. And I think it's worth considering at least and looking into these claims, because these are the pieces of history that get wiped and taken away from us if we don't dive deep into them. And then I also am going to have a whole section about, I didn't know this recently until I started diving into it, but did you know that there was a coup against the Hawaiian Kingdom that of course involved the United States and other nations, but it was actually initiated by Freemasons? Like the whole thing, this whole coup against the kingdom, I can't remember what they called it at this point, but I have all the links there ready to go whenever I get to writing this. More than half the people involved in the coup against the Hawaiian Kingdom to make it a Hawaiian state of the United States and, continue the colonization experiment was done by Freemasons as well. So then we've also got people warning about the Jesuits, of course. And I found this book, Jacobo Leon, The Jesuit Conspiracy, The Secret Plan of the Order, right here, which I have it downloaded already. This is it on Amazon. I try not to order anything off Amazon. I always go elsewhere, but just so you guys can see it. This is a book again. This claims that this guy who is a Jesuit priest, that he accidentally overheard a secret meeting among prominent members of the Jesuit order in Italy. And he subsequently left the Jesuits because he was like, holy crap, these guys are up to something different than I thought. And he basically became jaded with their practices, and he wrote this book. And what year was it again? Where'd we go? Does it say 1848? So there is a replication of the book published before 1848. So in the early 1800s, maybe late 1700s, sort of around the same time, you got people saying it's the Masons, other people saying like, no, I overheard the plan and it's a Jesuit plan. So we're going to look in that. Then also 1835, around the same time, Samuel B. Morse, who most people probably know because of Morse code, he actually wrote the book Foreign Conspiracy Against the Liberties of the United States, which also accused the Jesuits of being Austrian agents sent to destabilize American democracy. I ordered this book recently. It should be here any day now. I'm waiting patiently. The full title, I love this. These old books, they always just go like all in on their titles. So here's the full title of the book: Foreign Conspiracy Against the Liberties of the United States, How the Jesuits Used the Vatican, Foreign Monarchies, the St. Leopold Foundation, and Subservient Catholic Mobs to Secretly Infiltrate and Control America. Now that's a title. So that's by Samuel Morse, the inventor of Morse code. Again, he obviously believed that there was a Jesuit conspiracy going on. I have the writings of this guy, Avro Manhattan. I don't know if that's a real name, but I've only been able to find this person. Not a lot of information about them, but they had some books specifically about the Jesuit influence and their claims. Now, I'm not saying I've verified this yet, but I'm just putting it out there. This guy wrote a lot of books, and he believed that it was all the Jesuits behind everything. So some of his books, the Vatican, Moscow, Washington Alliance, the Vatican Billions, this one, Vietnam, Why Did We Go? You notice there's a cross in the middle. It has something to do with him believing there was a Jesuit Catholic Church influence. He's written plenty of books. This book was published in 1984 already, so this is older stuff. But Avro Manhattan, another one of the researchers who claims a lot of different world events were being orchestrated by the Jesuits. There's also this book, Who Are the Jesuits and What is Their Role in World History by Caleb Kimball. I don't even remember when this book was published. I can't recall where I found it. I've been doing so much research, but there's an ebook version of this. I'm trying to find it in print. Like I said, I haven't verified the claims within it, so forgive me if it's total crap. But I'm just diving deep, looking for older stuff to find the original source material. And then some of you who've gone down this rabbit hole, you've probably heard about Charles Chiniquy, who was a Canadian activist and former Catholic priest who left the Catholic Church and basically started kind of becoming a whistleblower in a way. There's this whole story, which I'm trying to verify for the Pyramid of Power because I see it repeated a lot, and I don't know if it's actually true. But there's this story. We know that Abraham Lincoln was a lawyer, and allegedly at some point him and Chiniquy crossed paths, and Abraham Lincoln represented him at a case. And then through that, he was able to inform Lincoln about the Catholic Church, the Jesuit influence. There's also some quotes that have circulated. Again, I don't personally vouch for them. I'm going to do my best to fact check them when we publish this final episode. That claim that Abraham Lincoln directly spoke against the Jesuit influence and warned and said that the Civil War, there's some theories that the Civil War was like a response by the Vatican, because the Vatican was like the only state in the world that recognized the Confederacy and perhaps wanted them to win. There's just a lot of different things. Like I said, I'm diving into that. I don't think it's all necessarily true. There's a lot of things that you'll notice get repeated often without people verifying and fact checking, unfortunately, but I'm going to be diving super deep and trying to verify what we can. So then we also got their oaths, Engineer Corps of Hell. This is another one that I wrote about. Where is this one? It's on the shelf somewhere. Let's see. I can't find it right now, but we'll just read the title because the title is another really epic one. I need to find that book now that I'm thinking about it. Okay, here it is right here. The Engineer Corps of Hell, or Rome's Sappers and Miners. Here it is, Engineer Corps of Hell. Get out of the light a little bit. This one was published in 1883, and the full title, The Engineer Corps of Hell, Catholic Church, Pope, Syllabus Errorum, or Rome's Sappers and Miners, containing the tactics of the militia of the Pope, of the secret manual of the Jesuits, and other matter intensely interesting, especially to the Freemasons and lovers of civil and religious liberty. So what you'll notice, as I have maybe, is that these groups, there's people who claim it's the Jesuits, there's the people who claim it's the Freemasons, but I've also gone deeper into and found that there is some overlap between the Jesuits and Masons. People claiming, no, the Jesuits influenced the Mason lodges and vice versa. We're going to get into that whole thing. Jesuits being expelled from Masonry at some point in the past. So again, I don't know, other people maybe feel more confident, but I don't think any of us can for certain say who's at the top of that. Now, I do have people like Adam Green who's going to say, hey, all of this argument about Jesuits and Masons, it overlooks the idea that in his view, it's the Judeo-Christian, folks behind it. Then we're also going to look at claims from people like Daniel Eshtelin and others about the Venetian black nobility, which maybe some of you heard about. And that's really all I'll say for now. We'll dive deeper into what is the Illuminati, of course, and different people's writings on that. We're going to talk about claims that it's Satanists at the top of the pyramid, and we'll hear from Mark Passio. We'll talk about dark occult secret societies, Satanists, Luciferians. Adam Green will have a counter argument. We're going to hear from David Icke about what he says this otherworldly, interdimensional, saying that what we face is beyond human understanding. Then people like Richard Grove and others who say there's actually no capstone at all. And then we're going to talk about the power of authority. We're going to end with secret societies, intelligence agencies, and the interconnected relationship, and then I'll suggest some solutions. So that, my friends, you're the first people to get a preview of the final episode of the Pyramid of Power. That's all I'm going to share now. I think I kind of feel naked now. I feel like I showed too much. But that is some of what I'm working on. And of course, in the conclusion, I will draw my own conclusions. I'm going to present all these different researchers who have their perspectives. We're going to look at the claims for what they say and verify what we can and say, hey, this is sort of not so strong. And then I will make my final conclusions. And I'm really, really excited to be finishing this series because this has been a labor of love, but it's also a project that I know I'm going to promote for the rest of my life because I've been so grateful to work with 3 different amazing editors who make my work shine. I do all the research. I write the scripts. I record the audio narration. And I do some directing as far as guidance, but the editors, they just take it and run with it and make it amazing. And that makes it visually appealing for you guys to watch and to listen to. So I started doing the Pyramid of Power originally as a speech in 2018 when I was traveling the United States. And it was a 2-hour presentation trying to tell all this information. And I realized over time, maybe this is better as a documentary. So by 2021, we finally got the project off the ground. We did some crowdfunding. That's the other thing. The entire thing has been crowdfunded. We've raised about $25,000, $30,000. All of it has gone to paying my editors. I haven't been paid a dime yet, unfortunately, but we have plans for the future. And so that's why I say it's a labor of love. We've been working on it for years, and now we've got 2 episodes left. The 16th one is in production right now, Religion and Secret Societies. I'll be writing the 17th one in the coming months, and we're going to release that by March 2025. And then when that's completed, my goal is to do DVDs for those who still want and buy physical media, as well as USB drives. And then I am going to turn the scripts that I have put out into a sort of book version. So we'll have a companion book version if you want to actually have a physical copy of all the information that's presented in every single chapter. And I will be selling that, for the rest of my life. And if I had to give someone one thing and say, here, watch this DVD or take this USB drive and start your journey, it would be the Pyramid of Power. This is the sort of documentary that I always wanted to see as a so-called conspiracy theorist, somebody who asks questions, but also does have my head on straight and can think logically and rationally and doesn't just believe every single random conspiracy that comes along. That's who I made this documentary for. So I made it. It's a gift to you guys as a tool to try to wake up your friends and family. Go to thepyramidofpower.net and you can watch every single episode for free, guys. Like, this is why I made this. So I can try to condense all my research and all these different books and make it in a palatable form, and then give you all the references you want so you can go deeper if you want. But if you don't, you can take the research for what it is and share it. And as I said earlier, I've had people tell me that they've homeschooled people with it, their kids with it. Somebody told me one time that they're like a substitute teacher, and they were, usually when you're in high school or school, when a substitute teacher comes along, you're not doing any work. It's just like, okay, you're watching a movie today, or you're just reading or something. It's usually chill, right? So they put on one of the episodes of the Pyramid of Power for their students to watch, which I thought was super, super cool. So yeah, that's been cool. And just to hear from different people who said, like I said, we're homeschooling, we're showing to friends or family, or I've had people tell me my friends won't watch other documentaries because they're too long. They're too, they got like the doom porn, scary music, end of the world, kind of Alex Jones style. That's not what we go for. Again, fact-based, logical, rational, true crime, not conspiracy, fantasy, etc. So one more time, the website is thepyramidofpower.net if you want to get caught up on that, and stay tuned for the 16th episode coming up and next month, just in a couple of weeks here in January.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.